another edition of the Mulatto Monday. You're here with yours truly, Mulatto Vanguard. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you guys. So today I'm going to be real quick. I'm not going to be here too long, but I definitely have something to share with you guys. So let me bring this up. All right. So I have an article here. The article here is fairly old. Okay. Pretty much 19 years ago, 2004. And of course, with the title of the stream is the title of this article. Don't call me Mule, Jackass. Pop Matters staff, 2004. So it's pretty old, but there's some extremely relevant information in here that I want to share with you guys. So, of course, if you guys have any questions, go ahead, put it in the chat, and I'm more than happy to oblige. All right, let's get right into it. Yeah, hopefully, I think the text is, or I can actually zoom it in for you guys a little bit. I think that's appropriate. All right, cool, let's do this. During a recent graduate seminar of a 20th century American autobiography and memoir, I found myself obliged, in the interest of civility, to swallow a fit of temper. For me, the seminar was another instance of reading a quote black writer in a class of all quote whites. An instance in which I felt the conflicting burdens to quote represent and to resist tokenism. In the end, I was forced to identify in a roundabout way with Richard Wright, whose Black Boy was under discussion. I did finally speak up when the question arose as to how pertinent Wright's observations are today. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll start from the beginning. The seminar began with a discussion of Irishness, occasioned by Joan Didion article. Several students spoke of their quote Irish family experiences. I wanted to speak up in part to counter a reading of Wright's autobiography as supporting the notion that Black families do not have stories, a notion that belays pervasive assumptions about Black familial dysfunction as a cultural attribute distinct from poverty and racism. But I did not speak. Why not? For one thing, I'm accustomed to resisting the impulse of represent all, quote, Black people in these settings. From another, I dread and loathe the questions, often unspoken, that accompany the revelation of racial makeup. But you don't look, talk, act Black. And those are in quotations there. I think that's something that, you don't really look Black, or you kind of look Black. You don't talk, you don't act Black. I always find that to be extremely intriguing when I hear that. You don't act Black or you talk white or something like that. How do you act Black? Is it perhaps acting ghetto? How do you talk Black? Is that perhaps not having command of the English language, barely being able to form a sentence, having a limited vocabulary? Is that talking Black? I'm trying to figure that out. I think a lot of us know. So continuing on, what are you doing here in the quote white world? What is it like to be you? And then there is the silence that often accompanies the revelation that my father is an AFAM. Not sure. AF dash AM. I'm not sure what that is. If someone could help me. Yeah. My mother a wasp. Okay. AF. I don't know. Oh, African American, I'm guessing, right? Father African American, mother WASP, because WASP is the acronym for White Anglo Saxon Protestant. So that's kind of your pure blooded white American, so to speak. The acronym is WASP, White Anglo Saxon Protestant, Protestant meaning Christian, right? Protestant, they protested the church, the Roman Catholic Church. So I'm guessing AFAM, African American, makes sense. I can interpret this silence in a number of ways: disgust, shame, boredom, the sense that, quote, they are in the presence of a walking, talking taboo, a cipher, and abrasion, a mule. Interesting. That's a term we hear a lot. You even hear that from these dust vesters. They talk about like mammies mewing for Blackistan and stuff like that. Interesting. Hey, what's up, DC in the house? Glad I'm available to watch this live. I appreciate it. So when I hear the term mule, right? Because the thing is, often with our detractors, I know I have people here in the channel who, I converse with behind the scenes as well, not just on YouTube, but we go over this discussion a lot, with other sources about this whole mule component. And that mulatto means mule, but obviously mules they cannot produce offspring. Mulattoes can. We have throughout history, right? At least centuries old that we can, track not only in Gold Coast in Africa, but obviously in Brazil, here in America, North, South America, etc., other places as well. So it's interesting, this whole muling thing. It means a mule. Why you call yourself a mule? And I tell these people, why the hell do you call yourself a nigga? Because the main people who don't want you, who tell you that mulatto means mule, you shouldn't be calling yourself that, are going to be black people, right? You look at them as like, why do you guys call yourself a nigga? You know, um, Interesting. I think I seen you in the comment one of my videos recently, so now you're here. Agitator 84. What is the importance of this qualification if we do not need to be loved by those who give it to us? I'm not sure what your question refers to. The thing is, what we often find, we're in a situation where we're only taught that we can be trusted by the community if we only accept one love source. So a person like myself and a lot of other people, we're basically like, look, we're going to accept both love sources, right? Dual heritage, meaning European and African. We are going to embrace the positive and the good in both. We're not going to push one to the side and only embrace the victims. Those days are slowly becoming, it's not going to be it's a thing of the past. That paradigm you see typically with a lot of the kind of older stock of mulattoes in America, like the Barack Obama generation per se, where they've only had a pathway to blackness. They only embraced being black, and they kind of uh, they hid their white heritage and their white parents, and they didn't acknowledge that. They uplifted black. That's not going to be so much of a thing moving into the future, is what I'm beginning to see. Even people younger than me, they're embracing both sides and they're unapologetic about it, which is beautiful. And it's going to ruffle a lot of feathers, mainly blacks, right? Because they need us for their mule. There's the word mule coming up again. They need us as their mule to claim all of our mulatto victories, all of our mulatto wins. And they need a group to kind of bolster their numbers politically and also their ego, their psyche, so to speak, their ego. They need to feel good about themselves. And so a lot of them, they need us, right? Let me continue on. Actually, I think I have Flowers. Hey, good to see you, Flowers. Thanks for being here. And definitely the Cloud Watchers. You got people like, yeah, some of the ghetto people from the Golden Sphere. So it says, now I've come around to the real reason for my decision to vocalize my identification with right. There it is, the word mulatto, an ugly word. Give me a basket full of racist, sexist, homophobic epithets over the word any day. Many such mean spirited words have fallen out of use, and others have been reappropriated, as they say. Right. Now, again, guys, let's see. Mulatto has not. It is still in circulation, and I believe cannot be absorbed into some kind of hip counter lingo. It is, in its pseudo-scientific definition, an incredibly debasing word, and yet it was uttered during this seminar by a student who presented himself as an astute reader of non-white literatures who gets post-colonial theory. So obviously you can kind of see where things are going with this currently. And of course, let me drop the actually article link. I'll have it pinned to the description. You guys can check it out. And then of course, oh, so someone, the UK's in the house. There has always been biracial people who identify as such and not black, but the vast majority identifies black regardless of the generation. Interesting. Regardless of the generation. That's definitely something that I need to account for because we see that in this generation as well, right? But there's always, like you said, always a population who will, um, choose not to solely identify as black. What purpose do you give to the creation of so-called? Yeah, I don't even want to entertain. I guess the people in the comments can kind of entertain that guy. In fact, I'd say it's even worse now since the BLM. Biracial people feel identifying as black is a way to align themselves. Yeah, it's also to be virtue signalers. There's a clip that I'll share pretty soon with Candace Owens, and she was talking. She has two mulatto children, right? She has a white partner, and she was basically saying to this guy, I'm going to tell my children to identify as black because they can get all the freebies, they can be, cute little victims and get the victim points, right? So that's there's definitely something to say about that, especially in this generation, as you've alluded to, because of the BLM movement, right? And how, I mean, I did a story about that biracial brat who was living in a mansion that her white father paid for. As soon as her white father passed away, she wanted to throw him under the bus. So you definitely see that. But I do like what you say about the generational thing, that it's not so. I mean, I just think that with the internet, with the information that's out there, a lot of our history has been buried, right? And now, and for me, I'm trying to uncover it and present it to the public. And so a lot of us don't even know that we've had this type of history. We've had these type of conversations and dialogues going on for years. A lot of us don't know. Most of us didn't even know we have someone 20 years ago who created a mulatto flag. A lot of us don't know. And so I feel like now with the internet, now this information get out there, more people can know that they have another option. I feel like that's why this generational thing, like I said, the Obama era, but even now, a lot of people are black identified. They have no idea that they can accept themselves fully. They don't have to kowtow and kiss black ass for their whole existence. They have other options out here. Let me continue on. The context in which it was uttered even more is telling. Although the subject at the hand was Black Boy, my well intentioned classmate, I will be generous, thought in pertinent to cite James Weldon Johnson's autobiography of an ex colored man, which is not autobiography but a passing novel, which examines the problems of racial identity. My fellow student compared Johnson's rejection of his, quote, people to Wright's distancing from the, quote, Negroes he criticizes, in the cold scientific language of the sociologist, only differentiating between the two by saying, quote, of course, Johnson isn't even black. He's a mulatto. Interesting. You're right. That is something that, of course, on this channel that I specify, I highlight, and of course, everywhere else on Facebook, social media at large. But it's a reoccurring theme where we typically see where they just want to pick and choose who gets to be black and who doesn't, right? They want to tell you that you're not black. But when you tell them, oh no, I'm not black like you, I'm a mulatto, all of a sudden they're going to come crawling over to your channel and crying and whining. Same thing on social media. You can't say mulatto, it's a mule. Well, the white man, my massa, he sees you as black, so you just black like me. See, they don't want you to tell them. They don't want you to express that liberty, that power, kind of, right? The sovereignty of identifying yourself. They want to pick for you so they can use your ass. And it says, this was the provocation that forced me to identify because I too am mulatto. What does this mean that I accept the use of this term? Is this a personal reappropriation? No. I use it because I am hyper aware that every time I do identify as a child of a black white union, I run the risk of having it flung in my face by some well meaning person who has never considered the implications of the world. Again, this is generous. I find it hard to believe that in the quote academy or anywhere else for that matter, so few have figured out that mulatto means mule, then stop to ponder what this signifies. Mulatto is a word with history. Bingo. And that's the reason why I use it. I stress the use of it and I promote it on this channel because the word has history attached to it. Many people will argue, well, it's tied to the colonial history and slavery. That's true, but there's all the other words we use within our lexicon is tied to that. You think of a franchise, or they call it a chain or a bond. Some of these financial terms, they come from slavery, right? Bond and chain. A chain is literally the chain they hold for the slaves down, right? But a chain is what you refer to as businesses, like a restaurant, right? Or a department store. There's chain franchises, yeah. Like with this New York Stock Exchange and the whole market, that's all based off the slavery paradigm, right? Just like white and black, these are all colonial terms, but they don't want your ass to have a term to give you power and identity, right? Too bad, too late. We're doing it now. So it drags along with it the most insidious doctrines of essentialist racist pseudoscience. The men initially circulated the term were no less advocates of a master race theory than Hitler and his eugenics. Those of whom I imagine my enlightened classmate is one, who would shrink from hearing blacks or Chinese or Mexicans or name your racial scapegoat, described as subhumans, as quote monkeys, might rather freely use mulatto. In both cases, racial quote others, meaning non-whites, are classed as species distinct from the non-other. This wisdom was received from convenient interpretations from the Old Testament, as from hack sciences like phrenology, or the quote facial profiling of the 18th century Dutch autonomist Petrus Camper. Quote, blacks and quote whites were two separate species made by God to inhabit separate spheres. The children of blacks and whites, should they, God forbid, ever take it into their heads to interbreed, would naturally be sterile and aberrant, hence mules. So this is was it miscegenation? Making Race in America, 2002. Okay, a thorough history of American and racial hatred and fear. Interesting. So that's definitely a book to note, because obviously we are the main subject matter of this material here. So that's something we have to look at. Okay, middle class Americans, a group well versed in horticulture and animal husbandry, understood that organisms from different species would not naturally mate, that abolitionism was bringing together ape like black men with white women meant that it was violating the fundamental boundary of nature, that of species. I think that is that an excerpt from this book? Possibly, I don't know. But it's probably the sources are going to be here at the end of the article. But let me continue on here. That's the short history. The word mulatto accumulated another, particularly American Renaissance, when the products of such violations of nature became the central figures of racial fear in white supremacist works like the novels of Thomas Dixon and D.W. Griffin's Birth of a Nation, based on Dixon's novels The Klansman, about which Dr. David Pilgrim of the Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia writes, quote, indeed, the Klan of the 1920s owes its existence to William Joseph Simmons, an itinerant Methodist preacher who watched the film a dozen times, then felt divinely inspired to resurrect the Klan, in which had been dormant since 1871. Griffith's film, one of many popular representations of the quote tragic mulatto, underlines the fear of the mulatto. The fear, there's a fear we call mulatto phobia. Now it's documented in history, and even current times. I have some other, receipts, so to speak, that I'm going to pull up. That's kind of more of the kind of master's PhD level, I feel like, as far as the researching with mulattophobia, just the baseline surface stuff with, the communitaw and the pro wax and all the Dr. Umar. That's like bachelor level, high school level, which is what I'm going to start. I'm starting things out. That's why a lot of people feel like I'm kind of just picking on blacks or focusing on blacks or something like that, anti-black. But I'm going to ease into some of the stuff, but there's a long history, like we can see here, the fear of the mulatto. This is centuries old fear of us. That's why they've neutralized us. They've removed our racial classification, right? They've omitted mulatto from the United States Census, right? They did that purposely to neutralize us because of the fear. There's a fear of us becoming a rising group a threat in the society, so to speak. And that fear is still felt in a lot of the hearts of America today. Okay, even the past decade with the Barack Obama ascending to the highest office, Kamala Harris in the vice president seat, and just all of us around. All look around you within media, popular motion picture, and your biggest music stars today and movie stars, etc., are mulattoes in America. So that fear is still ever so present in the society. But we do have track record of this stuff being documented over 100 years ago. Interesting stuff. Interesting. I'm going to talk more about it in the future for sure. Underlines the fear of the mulatto as the unspeakable sign of interracial desires and the poster child for cultural hatred. Why is the word still in use? According to such, quote, official prescriptions of proper usage as the Columbian Guide to Standard American English, words like mulatto, that is, quote, half breed, octoroon, and quadroon, are now deemed offensive by many people. By many people. The funny thing is I hear the word half breed, which to me is offensive. I hear that word thrown out a lot because with the word half breed, it essentially it means that you kind of don't belong, right? It's an other category. And I see that from the pro wax, Jason Black with the Black Authority. He's and I've and a lot of other of your conscious pro wax, they use the term half breed when they're basically talking about biracials or mulattoes, right? Like I said, I find it offensive because it means you're essentially an out group, you're an other. And like just demonstrated, mulatto, that is your group. We literally had our own racial classification. We have our own label. And, that's why there's a lot of people, they don't want to resurrect it. They don't want us to have that. They still want us to be stuck in the mud, basically kissing, black ass, going to the black side, not having an option for us, which is mulatto. So when I look at mulatto, I look at it as being whole, being one versus half breed. You're kind of split between the two. Same thing with biracial, two races, right? Mulatto means one. Half breed is kind of like other or outcast, right? In Africa and Ghana, they use the word mulatto. Okay, it's historically there in the Gold Coast, West Africa. I didn't hear half breed, but I did hear a word. Their version is called half caste. So instead of the breed, they say caste. That's a very popular term there, and I think that's more so like British English. British English I seen when I looked at kind of the etymology of half caste, and it mainly specified people who were half Anglo white and then half East Indian people. So that's kind of where that term was developed. But in Africa, for sure, the Gold Coast, they have mulatto and then Euro Afric, right? But yeah, half breed has always been offensive. But I hear this word more. What I want to say is more times than mulatto. I hear this word half breed, and a lot of these dumbass coon lottos and weak ass biracials who are kicking it with the pro wax, they'll allow these blacks to call them half breed, and and then they don't say nothing about it. Like I said, for me, when I was in some of those spaces, a few years ago, and I came to the conclusion, I had my epiphany moment or my biracial wake up call. I should call it mulatto wake up call, so to speak. I realized I was like, you can only be disrespected for so long. You can only be called a half breed, so many times before you wake up and smell the coffee. I was like, yeah, I think I'm in the wrong space. Okay. And there isn't a space for me. There isn't a space for mulattoes. Okay. Well, I'm going to create a space. And here I am. Here we are today having this conversation. Let me continue on. And now deemed offensive by many people, the entry ends with avoid these words. Of course, no lexicographer has ever put a stop to atrocious, humorous, or politically charged uses and abuses of offensive or obsolete words. A colleague informed me recently that she spotted the word, quote, mulatto on a billboard in Harlem. Looking up in shock, she drew a crowd. The billboard was removed the following day. And you think it was a black who got the word removed? Like, don't let them know that that word can be used, mulatto. Don't let them know that they have an option. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm just, speculating here. This I said this is 20 years ago. Yeah, and I heard from some of these people in some of these kind of spaces and circles that they actually did have a term. I mean, they had a website called mulatto.org or .net or .com or something. It was basically a mixed race website, Mulatto. I had no idea. They said it was early 2000s, so it was around this time. They literally had a website called mulatto.com or something like that. I didn't know. I was a young kid at that time, so different frame of mind, right? I didn't really have the kind of I was nowhere near where I'm at today. So why a confused reader might wonder, can't this word be reabsorbed? You know how? Like black people calling each other nigger? Yes, dear hearts, there are such things as stupid questions. This one warrants a critical engagement. That's the critical thing there as well. Like black people call themselves, an offensive term. Everyone else uses this term to offend them, but they call themselves that. I'm gonna publish a video or post a video today, or not today, excuse me, this week about that. It's an argument. It's part two to Jasmine. Jasmine over on TikTok, who has close to 1 million subscribers. She's a mulatto woman, and she embraces the term mulatto, which I love because she's even younger than me, decade younger. So I love to see younger people. Like I said, they're coming out. They're basically like, no, I'm not just black like that. So you can punk me around and outgroup me, call me a half breed when I don't agree with your little liberal victim politics. So she basically made the same argument. It's like all your favorite rappers are calling each other the N word. Nobody says nothing about it. But if a mulatto calls themselves a mulatto, then you see these blacks running in here. Well, how are you going to form this so-called mulatto community? Mulatto is an offensive term, then that's when you start seeing all that, right? First, allow me to digress, or he could be white. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Agitator 84. Either way, that's congruent with this article because, like I said, they view you as they create you, okay, but then they view you as a utilitarian group where you have to serve one of the parents. And we're like, look, we're going to be our own people when we are our own parents, right? When we decide to commingle, mate, and build with one another, men and women, straight men and women coming together, building families, communities, then we will be our own people. It's something it can happen. But there's a lot of people who are mulatto who are defeated and they feel like they're more fit to serve the communita for fake acceptance. First, allow me to digress. I call the white acquaintance recently remarking on how black people call light-skinned blacks high yellow. Yeah, and that's basically outgrouping their ass, right? Or a red bone or high yellow. There's already these type of tribal distinctions in America. Just like in Africa, you have all these different tribal variations. Same thing here in America. If it's a dark skinned guy, I've seen it all over the damn place on YouTube where a dark skinned guy is arguing with the light skinned guy. First thing, or a woman, first thing he'll say is, oh, you're a little high yellow ass, you're a little light skin ass. Yeah, dark skins do that every damn day. Kevin Samuels did it. There was a high yellow, so to speak, woman who called in his show, Kevin Samuels. The argument went south. And after Kevin Samuels kicked her off the phone, that was the first remark he made. He was like, "Oh, y'all, high yellow hoes think y'all the shit." And he's dark skinned. I'm telling you, they draw these distinctions for you. But a lot of you coward ass biracials haven't figured it out yet. You're still gonna be kissing butt, caping for acceptance. So a guy like me, I'll ruffle a lot of feathers because I'm not trying. I don't need your trust. I don't need trust from people who've sold their own to be slaves. I don't need your trust. So that doesn't work. Okay, then what? Then they look at you as a problem. You got to be dealt with. They're like, oh no, we can't have this guy. You know, we can't have, his freedom of speeches should not be honored. While they can call you a half breed and they can say, you got a white mom, I don't trust you. They can use all this, right? Half breed, you got a white mom who don't trust the mulattoes. But when it's reversed, all of a sudden it's an issue, right? Yeah. Let me continue on. Among other things, in response, I told him that racial prejudice are inherited from the dominant culture. Such linguistic markers of difference do not originate in communities of color. What the hell does that mean? Communities of color. See, they throw everyone's ass in together. A community of color, everyone that's not white. Most Asians on the planet have color. Most Latino people, Hispanic have color. Okay, the indigenous people of the Americas, all of them pretty much have color unless they've been miscegenated with the white population, which in America, that's basically kind of what happened. To find a pure blooded, you call red Indian, I don't really see them, which is very sad and unfortunate. Um, I have to travel and really go places like New Mexico or Arizona or something, or even in the Dakotas. But yeah, a lot of them they've been mixed in with whites, so there's not a lot of pure-blooded red Indians that I see. I guess they're not in the kind of media public eye, but the whole most of the planet has color. We've already went over that, right? Africa, South America, North America, indigenous population, Latinos, in Asia, in the Asian world, all over Asia, people have color. So I'm sitting there when they say communities of color, it is too ambiguous. It's as about ambiguous as saying you're a golden person for the golden race, the golden people. What the hell are you talking about? You know, when I say mulatto, you know damn well what I'm talking about. That's why the word, as much as these people, these liberals and pro wax and social justice warriors want to eliminate the word, they don't want you to use it. They're going to have a difficult time, right? Especially when these younger people get the microphone, okay, and they start uploading content, making videos. They're not going to stop these younger people, okay? The older, let me continue, but are integral to the kind of thinking that assigns a racial essence to each individual that must find signifiers to attach to every quote other, meaning every non-white. The Repeating Island, Duke University, 1992, writes Caribbean culture. Let's see this here. The high regard for mestizaje, mixture mulatto-ness, the mestizaje solution, did not originate in Africa or Indo-America. It involves posit, uh, positives. Oh my God, I can't even pronounce this word. Positivistic and logocentric argument, an argument that sees in the biological, economic, and cultural whitening of Caribbean society a series of successive steps towards progress. You can kind of see my academic level, reading all this kind of the jargon here threw me the hell off. Positivistic, logocentric, right? Interesting. This solution represents a positive. There we go again. This solution represents a positivistic reading of racial mixing as opposed to negative readings by Dixon Simmons and Griffith. That's the 100-year-old kind of clan sympathizers, so to speak, right? Yet both versions of mulatto-ness are produced by the same logocentric thinking, the kind of thinking that figures race not as a color spectrum, but as a gray scale, on either end of which are the absolute values of quote black and quote white, everything in between in a non-color, or a step toward whiteness or blackness. As a side note, look at how this language is firmly embedded in the neo imperial American psyche. Steve Cambone, assistant of Donald Rumsfeld, refers to the secret torture apparatus in Iraq as the quote, the Black Special Access Program that releases intelligence into the white world. High yellow then is a code for exactly not black enough or white but not quite, carrying a host of negative associations: race traitor, wannabe, tragic mulatto. Such identification perpetuates a grayscale thinking about race, situating mixed race people on on a scale of degrees of whiteness or blackness. His poetics of relation. Yeah, the whole thing is high yellow because what I want to say, this whole concept of being light skinned or you're a light skinned black or light skins, they're just like biracials or they're just like mulattoes. I disagree because mulattoes, a lot of us, we are balanced. We grew up in households where we had black and white influence, like me. I have my black father, my white mother. I'd see some of my white family, like my uncles, and then I'd see my black family because, yeah, because from where I'm from, California, was where my black family's from, but then my white family, they're from the East Coast. So my mother, moved to California. So I didn't get to see a lot of my white family, but I did see a couple uncles. But with my black family, I saw a lot more, as well more acquainted with them, with my grandmother, great grandmother, grandfather, great grandfather, uncles, nephews, cousins, like, so I was definitely, present there. So I grew up with both sides, right? It's only when you become older, as more mature as an adult, you begin to analyze these things, and also with real world experience, real life experience. I still consider myself to be young, and not as well traveled as I'd like, but I traveled most of this country in America, and I've been to other countries, and there's a lot more to do. But I'm coming to the realization now that we're not going to ask for our own group; we're going to demand it. So when you have guys here with no profile picture, what purpose do you give in the creation of the so-called mulatto? It's like, well, you're not really privy to that information. It's not, you can sit back and watch and hit the like button, but you know, if you come correct and ask the right questions, someone like me would be, inclined to give you the answers. But if you get all smart alecky, I don't think it's really going to be beneficial. So exclusion is the rule in binary practice, either or, whether as poetics aims for the space or difference, not exclusion, but rather where difference is realized in going beyond. In a footnote, he adds, no matter how much diversity there is in the variables created within such a system, it is always dependent on information stored in a yes, no, yes form. In other words, if you're white, you are right. If you are black, step back. Or if you are white, you are blight. If you are black, you are on track. Hmm. In group, out group phenomena, right? See, you eliminate all this stuff right here once you form your own group. All this foolishness gets eliminated. Exclusionary thinking does not allow for free play within a range of differences. It assumes instead a taxonomy, assigns all differences a nomenclature like rungs on an evolutionary ladder, each one a step from some atavistic throwback towards the perfectible. Signifiers like mulatto, quadroon, octoroon, and so on encompass the discourses of eugenics and imperialism, the founding discourses of a Western racist thinking. So with this, you guys kind of know the angle of the person in who wrote this article, right? You know the angle just based off this type of language. It's very extreme, right? Signifiers like mulatto, you know, properly identifying ourselves, according to this guy, it encompasses the discourses of eugenics and imperialism, founding discourse of Western racist thinking, right? That's it. This is why we got to be careful. We read the stuff, we analyze it, we're like, well, wait a second, you know, wait a second. This person is very questionable here. So, and I think everyone, the whole key is to question everyone, question me, right? What my motives are, um question everything, right? And that's basically what it is. Like, I just didn't want to accept a subservient position with the pro wax, I started to question all your little pro whack heroes and leaders. I was like, wait, why are certain people get away with stuff? Why is there this standard so low for all the little pookies and degenerates with the pro wax? Why? But then for a mulatto, right? You got light skin privilege. All of a sudden, the standards are high. I can't trust you, and then you get outgrouped, and I'm sitting there looking stupid. I'm like, well, shit, I can't have that happen again. I spent good money trying to support you savages. So now what? That was just a bad investment. Well, it was a learning experience. Now I'm in a better situation. I could put my money elsewhere, right? So continuing on, it says, and yet these words, just like the histories they conjure up, will not simply vanish. But personally, I, unlike some others, have no wish to see a mulatto nation. Interesting. So he's already declared himself an enemy of mulatto people. And we've got a lot of enemies. And what I oftentimes tell them is to stay mad. A new cultural stronghold from which mixed race folks can hurl damn. You can tell my academic level reading this article. Opprobrium down on lesser peoples and formulate their own chosen people stories and eugenic mythology. See, it's the way they're because they're framing this in such a negative way. The choice words, the language they're using, right? Eugenics, imperialism, racist. Like they're trying to corner us into a position where they're basically trying to scare us. Don't form your own group because you're going to be tied in with all these ideologies, right? Don't form your own group. That's basically what this is. All this shaming language essentially, but this is more academically obviously charged. Some of these words I'm first time seeing them. Like the hell, how do I say this? And yeah, they're framing it to basically like he doesn't even want to see a mulatto nation. Okay, well then go to your own nation wherever you are and have fun. But for those of us who want to be a group, we're not asking. And like I'm saying, these type of people who the guy who wrote this article, they're gonna frame us in a way as if we're radical, we're imperialist, and we're involved in these discourses of eugenics and all. What? We're just wanting to be your own group. Okay, I would prefer to go beyond historical divisions, but we find history is not left behind so easily. As with my experience of the resurgence of the word mulatto, I have found a corresponding interest in the term. In a web expedition in search of different versions of mulatto-ness, I came across two sites that illustrate the lengths to which people will go to appropriate the offending word or the parody such and attempt one the quote mulatto people, right? Maintained by a young man named Richard Warburg Miller. Richard Warburg Miller, as I've shared, is the man who has developed the mulatto flag. So this is somebody who was serious about the discussion 20 years ago. Okay. 20 years ago, there was a man, Richard Miller, who was serious about this conversation and dialogue. He understood the importance of us being our own. And a lot of us are coming to that realization as well now, today. So, calls for the formation of a mulatto culture in which mulatto people will realize that the day when all multiracial people, mulattoes, as well as mestizos, hapas, etc., will someday be recognized as autonomous groups, right? And I know Hapas are working hard to get that recognition as well. Because a lot of times we're looked at as just kind of floating around, trying to get in where we fit in, which is fine. But you also want somewhere that you can call your home. You want that sense of belonging, right? That's your right. And if you don't have that place, you got to create it. I tell people like I did the podcast last week, basically telling we got to have more people to start some channel, start some dialogue. Because I know, like I said, I ruffle feathers. I know, and I don't want people to come over and try to silence me or censor my speech, telling me you can't say it. You got to be nicer. I don't give a shit. I mean, go start your own channel if you don't like it. Because I don't see people talking about all these black identity extremists, the anti-mulatto stuff they talk about, or all the other, radical white people, on the far right and the stuff they talk about. I mean, they do get some criticism from the left, the media and stuff, but it's a lot of the pro-blacks I see. They don't get any pushback, you know. So the same people telling me that I'm being too mean or offensive or whatever, they have nothing to say about the pro-wacks who offend mulattoes basically daily. Um, and so mulatto people maintained mulatto culture. Realized a day, okay, I read that he has even designed a flag, black, white, and gray version of Dominican flag. I shared that, right? Yeah, he developed a flag and has a paper for mulatto receipts, only for self-identified mulattoes. I like that. Username and password required. So only for self-identified mulattoes. And that's the criteria that I have as well. So me and this guy, Richard Warburg Miller, looks like we'd get along, pretty well. We're on the same page, right? As far as the importance of having a flag, a symbol to kind of rally behind, having our own recipes, developing our own culture. And we have guys like here on YouTube, Justin Sharp. Justin Sharp, Jay Sharp, he just uploaded a video about a mulatto, tragic mulattoes, giving his explanation of it. he's under the same kind of thinking as well, is that we have to break away. For him is the hip hop culture, which, I like hip hop. A lot of people do, but he's definitely adamant about, breaking away from the negative parts of hip hop culture and how the culture is bad. So we're definitely having these discussions here, with different people. And this man, Richard Warburg Miller, was doing that 20 years ago. Very interesting. In an editorial essay, Mulattoes From History to Destiny, Warburg documents the history of mulatto culture, citing one dropism as its cultural nemesis. Clearly, this essay and others like it agitated some readers. In an apologetic letter preceding the site's homepage, Warburg explains his motives thusly: I do not behave like a black person nor a white person. Since I obviously do not look white, whites do not have an issue with this. Obviously, no one is calling me a wigger. The problem comes in when blacks around me complain that I talk like a white boy. I just speak proper English, that's all. Or acted as though I lived a sinful lifestyle because I wasn't into hip hop or didn't sport urban gear. Yeah. The thing is, when it's like I said, that you talk like a white boy, it's because you understand English. And if you don't understand, like there's words here in the article that I have to take a step back, break down the syllables, and like, let me pronounce this word because I don't know. It's the first time. There's a few words here. And so, yeah, talk like a white boy, meaning you speak English. It's your first language. You should speak it. And if there's a word, because there's more words in the English language than any other language on the planet, right? So there's words that are new words that are developed every day. So can any one person know every English word? I doubt it. There's probably some genius, a few geniuses out there, but the thing is, when you're in the communita, when you got people who can barely fucking speak English, that is the standard of what a quote black is supposed to sound like. There's been a few people who said that, oh, you sound white. I'm like, thank you. I mean, I rather sound like a civilized person than an idiot who can barely talk. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you guys. And then you got people like Miss Mulatto, or she calls herself Lotto now, who makes money to rap, but she tries to talk like she's all black. That's how it is in that business. Even Drake, right? But Drake has a pretty good command of the English language. But there's a lot of mulatto rappers. They want to fit in black society, so they got to kind of dumb themselves down and act like they could barely speak English, right? Sad and unfortunate, because the intelligent, civilized black people in America are basically pushed out of the community. They're forced to be pushed because the ghetto people, okay, at the bottom, they're the ones who dictate the culture, what the culture is. That's why you got like the rappers, Cardi B and what's the cat's name? Not Offset, because he met his demise a few months ago. It's not Quavo, the other guy from the Migos. It's shit. Cardi B, who's her man? I forgot the dude's name. Whatever, but he's got tattoos on his face and shit. They named their child culture, and you listen to them how they talk. It's like, yeah, that's literally the culture. That's literally the culture that's being promoted. So civilized, intelligent, you see a lot of intelligent, civilized black people. Yeah, they have partners that are not black. Yeah. And a lot of them, they're getting their passports and they're going across the seas. A lot of these black men in the tech, they're in tech business or software engineering, etc. And then they have their passport. They're called lames. They're called educated lames by the queens in their own community. Yeah, no shit. They're going elsewhere. No duh. And I saw that a few years ago. That's where I realized, why the hell am I over there, trying to get along and dance around when you guys are going to go out of your way to create more of us? I got to have something in place for those mulattoes coming of age to fully embrace, so they don't repeat this kind of foolish cycle of being outgrouped and feeling like they're kind of stuck, so to speak, right? Um, yeah, Warburg's attempt to claim or reclaim a mulatto identity is a reactionary response to the very kinds of thinking that engenders the mulatto, that this, not this or that, made aware that he is neither black nor white enough. He is driven by the logic of binary exclusion to embrace an essential racial identity that seems to be an unintentional parody of what he believes constitutes culture: a flag, a quote, legitimate history, a collection of recipes. For a useful alternative, see Leslie Sarr's Mulatto Nation, an online version of an art illustration at the List Gallery of Swarthmore College last year. It is a fiercely satirical imaging of just such a country where Sarr, a historian professor emerita from Mulatto University, and a lifelong outspoken activist for the mulatto movement, traces the history of the mulatto nation from its bumpy beginnings to its conflicted present. Of the 5 sections of her, quote, history, the first, titled, quote, Birth of a Nation, includes such seminal events as the 1773 Mulattoville Tar Party, at which plastic white baby dolls roll around in tar. Liddy Skin's Revolt is the headline. Sarr's accomplished paintings illustrating, among other things, the Tom Jones is Black theory and Sister Mulehead, an anthropomorphized figure with arms spread in Christ-like submission, show the influence of Frida Kahlo in darkly humorous representation of divided selfhood. Damn, there's so much there. I'm having a hard time pronouncing a lot of that. Let me check out some comments. So Foster says, we used to say half caste up until the late 2000s in England. Yeah, never heard it in America. It wasn't until I went to Africa I heard that term, half caste. But I think, yeah, they because they learned the British English in Africa versus like American English, because there is kind of a subtle nuance. Yeah, its origins are probably, yeah, in British colonial India. Yep. It was a forum. I exchanged a few emails with Richard back in the day. He disappeared after he met his girlfriend wife. She was also mulatto. He wrote a few pieces for the Interracial Voice. Interesting. Interesting. So you actually exchange emails with him for sure. He even had mulatto recipes on his website. I liked his enthusiasm, but it was hard to take some of what he was saying seriously. That's why we need more people. We can't rely on one dude to do all the work. We need a collective community kind of endeavor. We need multiple people with multiple skill sets, men and women, to develop ideas and contribute to the kind of larger community, right? We can't rely on one dude, one voice, or one woman, or whatever. It needs to be a collaborative endeavor. So it should be something that is a group based thing. The installation, postmodern, periodic representation of stigmatized racial transgression trumps empty political rhetoric as an effective way of confronting social taboos. Quote, Mulatto Nation also skewers the fallacious assumption that a politically recognized racial identity, an uneasy sanctuary, writes Ralph Ellerson, frees one from the ontological insecurities and political and ethical responsibilities that confronts all people, regardless of color. It seemed like the person before, it see that all people's political and ethical responsibilities of all people, but earlier in the article, yeah. Deeply ironic, Sarr's work speaks from a sort of existential nakedness and gets beyond the use, Glison's translated phrase, the binary logic of language, what damns Warburg's representation of mulattoes to the dustbin of revolutionary polemic. Both of this versions of mulatto-ness use language in surprising a banal attempts to solve the riddle of the mulatto, and Sarr's racial identity as a historical safe haven becomes an absurd proposition. That's it. Obviously, you can tell that this individual does not want mulattoes to be mulattoes. I mean, it's quite obvious. Um, but very interesting things there. Very interesting nuggets there as far as Richard Warburg Miller, because I just heard about the dude. I heard about him a few months ago, but I shared a video based on him with the mulatto flag, which I thought was something the public should be made aware of, especially mulattoes. But you know, that's it for today's edition, guys. I wanted to run, through this article with you guys, share it with you guys. Let me know what you think. And then obviously there's a lot of other information based on with this article, which will lead you to other articles, like they say the mulattoes people. And then they have one like Mulatto Nation, or that's a forum, I believe. Yeah. And of course, that whole recipe, as you've seen here with there's a comment here by um Foster. He says here he even had mulatto recipes right on his website. So very interesting. A lot of dialogue, a lot of information here that we can learn from, and of course share with each other. So I just wanted to do my part and share that with you guys. And of course, I'll be back soon with some more interesting topics regarding mulatto people. And so I'm going to close things out until next time, people. What am I going to say?